Regarding our time traveler's experience, it's probably a historical simplification to locate the center of this transition they witnessed to one particular time and place. But if required to do so, most historians would point to Northern Europe in the 16th century. But though they might agree on when and where, they're less likely to agree on the why. Some would provide a religious explanation, arguing the Protestant Reformation had unleashed the forces of individualism and wedded it to the virtues of temperance, work, and thrift. Others would argue that the discovery of coal in England was the real impetus behind the transition. Still others would point to strong institutions, such as the common law and secure property rights. But these explanations are insufficient by themselves to explain the revolutionary changes that took place at this time. While some of these conditions could be found at other times and places in the world, they'd never been able to generate sustained improvement in human welfare. Apparently, religious, material, or institutional conditions were good kindling to keep the flame of progress burning, but not the spark that could ignite it. So what was that spark? Economic historian Deirdre McCloskey has argued persuasively that it was a change in people's values that took place at that time. In particular, there was a change in the dignity attached to the vocation of business, what McCloskey calls bourgeois dignity. Dignity is the worth that we assign to each person. In the Judeo-Christian ethic, each person has equal dignity based on the understanding that each of us is created by God in His own image. But in practice, this equality of dignity was widely ignored. Some people were disrespected based on the circumstances of their birth, whether it be for race, creed, sex, or class. Others were disrespected based on their profession. Such was the case with business people, the bourgeois class. At a time when courage, loyalty, taste, generosity, and honesty were seen as the highest virtues because they were the virtues of the highest class, the bourgeois were known for none of these. On the contrary, they were suspected of an inordinate love of money and all that implies: fraud, shrewd bargaining, opportunism, self-seeking. You'll find ample documentation of these suspicious attitudes not only in the literature, art, and history of Europe, but in most of the world's cultures. But for some reason, attitudes in Northern Europe, especially in the Low Countries, began to change in the 16th and 17th century. People began to recognize the virtues peculiar to this class of people. In particular, they seemed to be very inventive, hardworking, thrifty, and trustworthy. They didn't have the kind of courage that shows up on the battlefield, but they obviously had the courage to put their wealth and reputation at risk in the pursuit of some future rewards. At the same time, they displayed prudence and a willingness to work that distinguished them from mere gamblers. Society came to recognize that the wealth of this class was based on individual merit, not entitlement. The wealth of the bourgeois had to be earned, and that was by no means easy. This new appreciation of the bourgeois virtues led to positive portrayals in the arts and in literature. And success in business became more likely to increase one's prestige than to reduce it. And this had the effect of opening up for many people a way of thinking about the world and their role in it. At one time, idealistic and capable people seeking approval of God and man might be inclined to join the military or the church or seek political office. But now they were increasingly willing to pursue a career in commerce. And because Holland and England had particularly strong institutions protecting property and individual liberty, those engaged in commerce in these places tended to thrive there. Families accumulated the fruits of their labor, and this wealth was available to be invested in new opportunities that were constantly being created. The result was the emergence of a dynamic entrepreneurial culture. John Stuart Mill, the English philosopher and economist, once observed that a society that has liberty has as many potential sources of improvement as there are individuals in it. But never before had so many of these individuals considered the search for these improvements to be a worthy occupation. The economic system which emerged from this shift in values is called capitalism, although McCloskey thinks this name is misleading. She's coined a different, more descriptive name, Innovism. This new word is appropriate because the wealth created at this time was not primarily due to the accumulation of capital, as if by some mechanical piling on. As a matter of fact, it often advanced more rapidly by the destruction of capital. as the most dramatic improvements often made existing investments in capital obsolete. As economist Joseph Schumpeter put it, capitalism advanced in waves of creative destruction. The progress observed by our hypothetical time traveler was not the result of capital accumulation. It was the result of idea accumulation. Every new way of doing things, every new product or solution that emerges in one business spurs imitation and extends it to other businesses. In economics jargon, innovation has positive externalities. Each person's success has ripple effects on the success of others. Though each business competes with the others for customers, their activity is essentially cooperative. It results in constant creation and dissemination of new and improved ways of meeting people's needs. It should be no surprise, then, that the cradle of the Industrial Revolution was in that part of the world where the cultural support for Innovism was strongest.